Kära vänner, dear friends, in this room and far away. It's really quite special for me to present to you the speaker. Because when a young architect, as a thesis project, develops a beautiful and ingenious way of joining cut stone with metal, and then goes ahead and actually realizing a wonderful building using then you know that a very particular architectural journey has started. We were many blown off our feet at Francesca Torzo's exhibition at the Biennale in 2018. The inviting generosity and the sensuous delicacy she showed is a kind of hallmark of her work. Her buildings, her teaching, her conversations and lectures send out a strong tone of hope as well as urgency. That architecture has a power through its gentleness and its refined celebration of the living. I spoke with Shelley McNamara of Grafton Architects the other day, and we were in total agreement. Francesca Torzo is nothing less than an outstanding talent and a unique voice in architectural culture. Stockholms Arkitektförening and myself, we are delighted to have you here.
Thank you, Elizabeth, and I have to react that I stand saying that the honor is mine. A great honor because Stockholm is a city that speaks of ethics and a sober elegance, which matters today more than ever, I would say. And because of you, Elizabeth Hutz. I did not know you. I met you in 2018 at Venice Biennale, and I met the life I believe in, which is of values and freedom, but not the freedom everything you get. The freedom you choose in respect and valuing the others. So for me, this is indeed a very, very special evening. I'm emotioned. It's not honored like violin or fancy or glamour. It's really felt. And the presentation has a title which is chosen, A Tale of Times, People and Spaces, because what is it making buildings? We reflect upon life, we reflect upon culture, which means reflect among times, people and spaces. And it's not about a language or a figure. It begins with a movement of earth plates have formed our visible landscapes and invisible ones, mostly unknown, under the waters of seas and oceans. On these emerging earth topographies, we have settled in millennia. And it is peculiar how there is an intelligent, elegant economy of settlement. Vitruvius said, choose a healthy settlement. Choose a place where you can live good. And this is not only about orientation, it's not only about the wind, it also gives a sense of harmony. Is harmony embarrassing? A little. Shall we look for other words? We settled first in few spots, then we gathered together, and we gather in villages, in cities, and that brings also amplification of since ever genuine need for representing life that comes with human being. There is a beautiful person that made me reflect on how this that I call sometimes the grain of cities and landscapes, it's just an expression of time, but is a real expression, like trees. In 1999, Peter Emke cut slices of wood, trunks, and then he was placing ink on a stamp and then inking the trunk. Then he was placing on top silk paper and keeping the trace of all this long, long time of lives. Are our cities, villages, alleys, paths, stairs different anyhow? It is a combination of material constraints, chances, and also of immaterial chances. And there, I'm going to drink because I'm emotional, so I will get dry through time. Please be understanding that. But here, it's all civilized people, it's a civilized country. And there was Fernand Braudel, which is a wonderful historian from France who founded a way of studying history, which is a history of man. It is all les annales school with Jacques Legoff, Jean Duby, that for sure you are confident with. And Braudel spoke about la longue durée, which is the long length. And it is about so many happenings happening at the same time. All beginnings and endings happening at the same time, like also with thing I was naming. And so all these events of history, like Renaissance was founded in the Middle Age, because there was a great availability of metals, because they were experimenting with colors, because they're trying to break through the big wall with Byzantium and take off Venice from the leadership of being the only gate to have trade, so business, money, and food. So Renaissance was found in the Middle Age. So material chances give an input, so we may gauge the weight of a stone which is appropriate for a time, so we cannot replicate what we can do in 1613, 1742, 1850, 2021. It's all different, but we can have a dialogue. And that is what I am interested in. What you are seeing now are studies for a stone pavilion or stereotomic where there is no connection, metal connection, there is no mortar. It's just the study of the volume, the form of the stone, stereotomy, which gives the tectonic. It is it light, tent, or is it heavy space? It's both. And again, it is singing again the songs of others. That is what I am interested in, which is just a point of view. It's mine, which is what I'm here to offer you. This is the stone for the lintel, this is Belgium, for the architrave, that is Italian, for the beam above the pillars, which is a dialogue of friendship with Ruskin. 7 lamps, lamp 2, the truth, interlocking joints. What is my point? History is nothing more than a continuous series of questions addressed to the past in the name of the problems and curiosities of the present that surrounds and besieges us. My point is, to the words of Braudel, having been is a condition of being, and we should not be worried that we are living of a continuous recomposition of a wholeness through fragments. How is it that if I may ask you, do you have, your students probably, no? And you may see, and it looks like a tent, no? It has, it's a vault, it has a textile assonance. There is a similarity somehow, a familiarity, but they are so different. We are in a vault in Rome, in an unknown courtyard, and we are in under the roof of Casa Milà by Gaudí. I believe, I observe, before believing it, I observe, so I believe, that we continuously think again thoughts of others, and how we dialogue with others about spaces and places is through something we may know. Wittgenstein was saying, how peculiar is that a blind person has notion of red. That's the magic of human being. We belong to a culture of humanity, which is multifaceted. There are many languages, many. How blessed we are, there are so many. There are different attitudes, characters. Orazio in Ars Poetica would say that you have to be consonant with your voice, your language, to the story you are telling, so that people can live it as true. Aren't building offering a character and a consonance, depending on ages? Isn't language a tool to entrust and greet an agreement of a community where there is both rigor, discipline, economy of building, but together fabulation and festivity? Isn't there that decor is truly what Alberti was saying, the multitude of citizens? I'm standing for no proclama of one language, not one form. I am interested in listening to all the intertwined relations among things that allow us to relate to something else. I may say to you, sir, that are the reference for the institution, I would say bridge. We never worked on the same bridge, no? But we may remember some bridges. I may say to the lady, do you recall a tower? We all have an idea of a tower. I would say a hall. I would say a room. I would say a niche. But I think of Giorgione. Can a niche be a tiny clearance, a radiance in a wood? It can be. So you see, parameter is not everything. Our mind is incredible. Aldo Rossi. Parameter is one thing. The parameter we perceive is another thing, which is tuning of measures in relation to other measures. So I may be bigger from this stage, but I'm very tiny in reality. But it also relates to how we relate to others. Others is not only community, namely said, politically, socially, anthropologically. Community is something wider, I believe. And there I am very fond of Karl Popper and all his studies and readings about the folk. How is it that here in Stockholm you have storytellings, folk stories that are equal, identical to my Italian stories? Isn't that surprising? And we have that in Africa. We may change some things. Devil can be white or black. Okay, we can change milk with water, but stories keep on returning back. So this relation among spaces, so that we can be in continuity with past time and time present is for me something about a reflection on not a figure, like you say, classical order or modernism, like a belonging to a language. It is not about a parameter to give sanctity and holiness to a rule, so you're safe with the Aurea proportioning or Schindler trick or the plastic number. It is more listening to these instances of authenticity that have survived. So I can believe in them. So I have no answers, but many, many questions at the end about this living world, about livings, about humanity. Godard in 1969 was interviewed by Rolling Stone magazine, and he was saying, beyond the theater is life. That's what I'm devoted to with my profession. And behind life, the theater. My point of departure was the imagery, and I discovered the real, but behind the real, there was the imaginary. It's a continuous movement, and that is how I observe it is how our mind works. We are continuously collecting data, information which are substantial of the senses, all of them. And our brain, or this mystery we are made about, continuously recomposes it in open narratives or in instance of life we can refer to, even if we have not lived them. If you think you have to recognize it's true. We're just not aware. And it is okay, it's absolutely wonderful that we are not aware about it. But in this profession we are doing, we have to think about it. And so, questions follow, because I have no answers. And I'm going to present you 4 projects. We are with 2 in China, 1 in Belgium, and 1 in Italy, in the Riviera. Allusions. I don't know. How do we remember other places? I know it happens all the time. Words do not live in dictionaries. They live in the mind. Yes, because the truth they try to catch is many-sided, and they convey it by being many-sided, flashing first this way, then that. Thus, they may mean one thing to one person, another thing to another person. They are unintelligible to one generation, plain as a pikestaff to the next. And it is because of this complexity, this power to mean different things to different people, that they survive. Why would we search for one truth when there are many voices? China. It is a culture of intimacy and sobriety. It is made of moments. The words are like spaces on the paper, on ink. And when you name something, if you want to say luminosa, you have a sun and a moon together, and they make a space together. And when you are walking in villages, not Shanghai, because Shanghai really scared me. I mean, the roads were so gigantic, I was completely lost. But in the villages that I may understand, it is something very similar to this amazing. I only offering you a fragment of this beautiful painting by the Song Dynasty, where the spaces are next to each other, and the threshold is in reality given by absence or inhabiting. And there is so respect defined the spaces. And I was invited, highly fortunately, to propose the design for a dance school in Bishan. Bishan, we are in the south center of China, it's quite central. It is at the feet of the Yellow Mountain, so you have to imagine a vast mountain, elongating very, very, very long and opening towards an amplitude of horizontal fields. And the villages are a broadery at the feet of the mountain. And these villages are, as in the model you may see, all a sequencing of lapses of shadow. They are breaths of shadow, Elizabeth. They are so beautiful. And the location, well, the program was very straightforward. Classrooms for dance, which was both traditional and with a student of Pina Bausch. So it was a connection between European searches on dance of movement and traditional dance. And offices, of course, in the place were together. And it began for me from this pencil drawing, which was a way to rethink, revisit, live again all these lapses of shadow and light of the village I met. Why that? Dance is movement, and dancing is having a theater which is with no front and back. It is all turning around. So the sequencing of light and shadow was very important in proposing a space where you could perform changing, like discussing, and this of course, I'm not inventing anything, it is Peter Brook Theatre with Jean-Guy Leca, Le Bouffe d'Arnaud, or in the desert where they go around and they tell stories. How to do that then? I was taught today that I'm better a builder than a technician, so as a builder I began with something that would make real the space. So I began with a pillar and a translation, a mineral translation of a wood culture of building. You see, you can, I believe, you can phrase again a familiarity without necessarily miming material or form. Staggering is the culture. Why? Short wood. Short wood in China, short wood in Japan. Japan comes from China. It's there. Beginning is China. Short wood, so you stagger and you become master of joining. But then that becomes a fabulation for the people. And we do need belonging. So you need a rhythm where your body can relate to, your kid running can relate to, your sitting alone and melancholy can relate to. So a pillar in concrete. And the sizes were tuned with the tiles of the roofs. The plan, is it Palladian? Is it Cannes? I was studying Cannes here. And it is the part where you have the ground floor, the hall, you have a matron. Can you see my hand? Yes. I have to be careful to not do strange clicks. There is a matroneum, then there is a technical floor, very dry, and then becomes a layering of spaces in height to be a tower which is in dialogue with a neighboring tower that you will meet later, where you may say, very seducing graphic plan. Yes, but that's nothing. That's nothing because it's more interesting the space, the real. Because what you have is one plan, it is a folded Baroque space. We are like in Bohemia. When you are at the upper floor, you have clear niches, and they were traveling in Renaissance. East, North Italy, Palladium. When you go up, you are in a really very sharp belvedere, and we are in the Lantern of Genova. So we are really striking sharp the north, south, east, and west. So never get, you students, never get seduced by graphic. It's a kind of fake friend, false friend. This is the context. We have an ancestor temple and the existing industrial building from China that you see on these sites, very simple, but then the proposal was to weave all this pacing of lapses of within and without, and continuously within and without. I'm not going through the project with the program because that's not the point. We move on. I was interested in seeking for a measure. That's why this model, like I make models not for the beauty of them, but because I need them to tell a story. I need an archaeological plan. The archaeological plan was because I was seeking for the cultural parameter of the courtyard and path and vestibule of the village, and to meet it again in the dance school. I was trying to measure these folds of shadow in the context and meet them again in a different way in the project. It's non-romantic, it's non-shamanic, it is experimental, closer to Descartes and Galilei. It needs vision to be a scientist, it needs daring. So measuring breeds, folds of shadow and light, and meet them again, because at the end, we build, we go away, and our buildings stay. We should be responsible, thoughtful, to give something that people can relate to and build on. Context. Behind Yellow Mountain, open valley of fantastic edible vegetables. I adore that kind of salad, which I don't know the name. And here is the site, at the edge. The tower that you saw before in the photo, this one, was built by the inhabitants. It's a civic tower. It's non-religious. So that's the dialogue. The two towers speak. Empathy. Another question. How can we belong? It's not easy to speak about empathy, because immediately you would think a kind of sandwich of good feelings. Very cheesy, very candy. Not really up for that, no? We drop it. Empathy for me is the sharpness of this image, where we are bold, we humans. We are settling artifacts on earth and water even, soon in the sky. So we are quite a kind. But we are also capable of, I say it another way, we can't cease seeking for a reason to be on earth. We are capable of wonder. So empathy for me is this amazing ability of man to make a statement. Now this is important. Empathy, belonging, therefore, for me is like weaving times, but in a way that it's not rephrasing with nostalgia, a time that cannot ever be again because you cannot replicate materials conditions. It is precisely this empathy, which means how do you make alive something that has survived? How can you not make die something that survives, which means it's meaningful for people? And it is about memory, giving birth to memories. They sound abstract. Example, in China, when they portray a mountain, they don't portray it as it is. Mountains are not blue. Imagine, they're not blue. But they paint it blue because you will perceive them blue. So this belonging, this empathy is a deeper understanding, which is totally non-romantic and not about good feelings. It is a precise, more open understanding of what people can relate to and believe in, beyond what they think they should do, because that's more powerful. That survives, not the rules. Governments change, social agreements change, but folk stories stay. And so we can relate to a roof from, we are 1,000, with all these flying cranes. We can relate to a gathering around a table. No? I'm seeing thoughtful faces. There are permanencies. Permanencies, again, for me, begin with a time devoted to understanding things. And so I started drawing and carving the places I visit. We are in Yaoxu, which is a fabulous context, a fairy tale. It has meandering rivers, and so I needed to carve and drop inks of ink to spend time and tune myself, have an understanding of the spaces between things, because I need to learn all the time. I don't know anything in advance. And I was invited to design a library pavilion, which is where it is my arrow. Very, very teeny tiny library pavilion, which would be a place where teachers from the village, which is here, would walk along the river and gather to listen to storytellings with the teacher. And from a hotel, which is placed here for VIPs, they could finance building the path in the wood, in the bamboo wood, for the children from the village, so the children could have a safe walk in the bamboo to go and listen to stories. Both ways. There is no devil in the world. We just have to invent a way to make it work right for more than 1 or 2 or 10 people. So that was the assignment. You see the teeny tiny tower there? Why a tower? That's the landscape. Big mountains, meandering, so you are continuously meeting these scenes of scenographies passing in front of you, and there are some towers because you need to overlook who's coming from the river, because there are many curves down to earth, so you have to go high to overlook what's happening behind. And they wanted to be, in a way, visible. So I proposed a construction of bamboo that could rephrase this moving, through all the folds and the meanders in among the mountains. It's not quoting the mountains, clearly it's a building, but there is a sort of laziness and slowness in human beings that we keep in the pocket stones of experiences. We were down in the street and we recall it just some hours after when we are in this room with wondrous paintings. So we are slow and we have the pockets full of memories and things, experiences we collect. And we forget in the middle, we forget them in the instant when we collect them. And I want them to be alive. So we have this, you see the ground plan, it's a cryptoportico. So it is, because it is a place subject to floods, so it was needed to guarantee that the first ground floor was waterproof. So it's blue pigmented concrete where children may play. And you have entrance with a staircase and you reach the upper floor where here are all the shelves in the inner facade. And here you have a terrace look out. Up the staircase and then you go to a belvedere. Section, roof, but this was for me the most important. So it begins always from this understanding the relations. Remember in the beginning I said to the introduction, the parameter which is not just a parameter but measures that allow you to bond and belong to something else. That's my study. it relates to the spaces in between the mountains as much as the clearances created in the bamboo wood. And of course, all of this, if it's only a storytelling, it's quite dull. So it's about making it real, otherwise it makes no sense. Bamboo, it's there. Bamboo is a superhero material, just fears nails along the fiber and insects. So 2 things we tied up, second we dyed. So this is a one-to-one study, how to weave it. Of course, not bamboo, this is wood. Let's understand how to do it. And this is the composition of the facades of the tower. And we were preparing for the building site when the COVID pandemic began. So now we'll start again up in 2023. I asked it to delay a bit because we have many other projects and things just need time and care. So you can do it all. So the bamboo for me, I'm also on that, it's so important for me also in relation to the conversation with Elizabeth, to have a little bit a clarity that I have no geography of the craftsmanship on its own. So bamboo, all materials are totally fine for me. It is, but it matters how you use them. And I'm interested when you use them with respect and intelligence, and when you use them in a way to weave a dialogue with time past and time present. In that sense, very often I encounter combinations of craftsmanship and industrial production. But the point is precisely what we're discussing with Elizabeth, the thinking hand, intelligence, and respect for sources of people. Another question, also what all we are doing when we're building is that what we do normally survives us, we die before, and lasts much more, but physically, but only few buildings survive, are preserved by people in length of time. If you see, how is it that historical cities, it's very clear what people have chosen to keep and what they have changed. It is a kind of self-evidence of choices of humanity. And I believe in a sense of wonder. This I have to read because I'm not able to say it better, really. Thomas Eliot, 1919, from a wonderful writing which is Tradition and Individual Talent. But the difference between the present and the past is that the conscious present is an awareness of the past in a way and to an extent which a past awareness of itself cannot show. It's a conscious present, all about a conscious present. I drink again. I made a competition in 2011. In reality, I made it 2000, but I cut short, it was a long process. I went to Belgium from 2004, so for me it's a kind of life experience from 2004 till 2019. Quite a bunch of life. But the competition was done in 2011. I won this competition to renovate and extend a house for contemporary art, which means that it is a museum with no permanent collection. And it was to extend an existing building from 1958. I was very interested in a sequencing of spaces that could mesmerize the perception of indoor and outdoor, as it happens in the historical city of Hasselt, as it happens in the sequencing of passage, courtyards, and building themselves of Zaatari 3. Here we have the ruins of the church in Hasselt with the Begijnhof, which is the Beginage. We're going to see better later, are houses for, well, a peculiar housing typology. And all this repetition of spatial relations was for me like the sound ground to dispose a building that could, within difference and contrast, belong to the Beguinage. And it is expressed on one side in the structure of orchestration of spatial sequencing. On the other side, it is expressed by the disposition and presence of the openings. On one side, as a filigree of openings towards the interior, on the other side, an enclosed facade. But how do you belong graphically? You can't. It's not enough to say that you dispose a building which is enclosed towards the outside and open towards the inside of this Beguinage, as all the other buildings, because if you do it in blank concrete, then it is out of scale. So it was needed to give scale to it. And then I come back to the print of the trees, of the trunks that we had in the beginning of the introduction. So I believe that we need to understand time by time, when we have chances, what is the consonant, appropriate grain we have to build, invent, both invent and discover and invent, to be consonant and decent also, respectful with a context, not in a geographic sense, attitude towards a context. So there maybe I'm a little bit distant from Norbert Schulz's theory. I see it a little bit different. I respect him highly, but I see it different. I'm more for this ineffable, and it is where I feel inadequate to really name it and word it, to tune a measure of the repeated gestures of building, which are also cultural, that survived, that we can somehow relate to and reinterpret or develop with other means. So I made a building of bricks, but I invented the brick and I invented the way of building it, the wall, both. This is not done before. But is that relevant? Luckily, totally not. We can really not talk about it. But the good thing is that you can do things in any time, and they are alive only if you use present tools. Industry, craft, both, like being open, otherwise it's just doing picturesque, which is that. Then we are in mannerism of many, many, many kinds. That's the death of a society. Big, very, very big facade, 60 meters. Almost, well, it is 11 meters high. There is only one joint, which is at a fold. It means 30 meters. Why that? Because it needs to be continuous, because all the context is so. It's so simple. I did not dare to deny the solid unity of differences of this island in Hasselt. I thought it was just making sense that it survived, so why would I break it? Who am I? No? And then how to do it, it's very difficult, because then how can you relate to specific sizes of bricks, to specific sizes of mortar, specific ways of building? One urban island, clear, made of so many different buildings. The kind of houses We are of the 18th century, brown, deep brown. Ochre, it is a jean factory, now a museum, and there we are at the mid of 19th century. Then we have the grey, housing for the elderly of the 50s. Then light grey, pale grey, us, 2019. Red, Pompeian red, 1958, Wondrous, building a museum from 1958. Engineer Daniels. Again, Porkebouw. That's a story, all here in one slide. Abegainov, which was a city in the city, it was a refuge for women at the border of society. There were orphans, there were widows, or they were just abandoned, or at the border of society, intelligent ones. So they had a church which was protecting them. They were not allowed to give sacraments, but they were safe there, exchanging services. So they were teachers, they were dyeing, they were chemistry, and they were also pharmaceutical in a way. They knew really herbs. That's why always in this typology, highly diffused in Belgium and the Netherlands, which is UNESCO patrimony, has always a structure of a chained wall of houses towards the city, which are blind, mostly towards the city, with clear gates. Then they open towards inside what is a city, and they have orchards and a garden. We added a mosaic tile, and the same extension, it is made of mosaic tiles of different rooms. Why? There is a storytelling, because we were asked in the competition, what is the space for exhibiting art in the future? Impossible question, very difficult. So I said that it's also not making sense question, I find. So I said you have a wondrous building, which is a building from 1958, classical structure, so by fact, ideal white cube, and I think you know the theory of the white cube of the 70s. Then we offer something different. We offer rooms which are specific per proportion, light atmosphere, and that people could name in a way, could recognize. Here you see context, the island, clearly recognizable by being molded by water, soft, it is muddy water. The Begainov is here, very clear. This is the existing museum and this extension. Bigger, you see that there is a kind of assonance of sizes. The width of the Begainov houses in the 18th century came, again, very simple from the length of the wooden beam. How long can you get the wood? But then, Daniels in 1958 enlarged it a little, but still kept a belonging, and I found him very intelligent. It is, in every city, it's not that you perceive the scale of the spaces only from the measures of the facade, of the windows of the facade. There is not this didascalic transcription of what happens inside when the space becomes a facade. But valuable buildings always express a size. Again, I hope you keep in mind this footprint of the trunks of the beginning. It means that there are specificities for places which are cities and are cultural places, and sometimes you have cultural migrations of buildings. Like today we saw this wonderful house by Aspro that was really like, it was a sun, it was a southern sun in the north, like it was like a joy, it was a wonder, but northern. And so there are these melanges. But always you can recognize a kind of lapse of sizes, which is a permanency of building gestures that then becomes cultural and a myth. We come back to that. Very shortly the plans, because I think I'm being long, so I should speed up. And anyhow, it's better to just visit the building. No, it's true. No, really, it's funny because here you can be seduced by all the rooms that it is, okay, it is proportioned, elegant, but that's really pointless. But one thing you can see is that the Flügel 58, which is existing building, and the extension building, they are one building together, so two wings. That was very important. So we almost restored this part, we intervened in the mid part, and then we made the extension new. And we seeked for this continuity along the facade, quiet, like if you have a caress on your cheek when you're walking on the street, nice grazing light, no demanding attention, quiet. And then towards the garden, it was a kind of moving to find a balance with this beautiful fold of the Jean Museum and to create another fold so it could welcome in a niche the garden, beautiful garden. So meandering spaces, like a city, because they had a wonderful classical spatial orchestration existing. So what I wished was to offer a plurality of parkour, a plurality of spaces where people could invent their own narrative and reading of the exhibition. So in a way it is maybe putting a little bit in discomfort, but I think a healthy one, curators and artists. Giacometti was taking 1 week to place his 3 statues in one room. Brilliant. And we should reflect more upon that. So it is all a building that is a chamber for shadow and light. And it rephrases spatial situations of the existing building from 1958, as well as it remembers other spaces as villas in the northeast of Italy by Palladio, or palaces, but in which way? In the mesmerizing interlacement of the exterior and the interior, and the exterior as a trompe-l'œil. The exterior is an oniric space that it is completely introvert. See the garden only at the entrance and in the very, very last space of the exhibiting rooms of the top floor. While you're walking around, you spend lengths of time, always following grazing lights, as it happens in the hypnotic walk around in Palladian villas. Because Palladian villas are oriented with the plan, and it seems they are pointing to the cardinal directions, north and south. What really happens is that Palladio dances you around to live the landscape. And the landscape is transformed into a painting, so becomes an artificial. That's what we tried here. Always have a painting of the outdoor through color and through plants, but then you meet again the context, and then you rest. Rest again. Important. The choice of some details were not for the detail itself, but it was to support this continuity. You see it very clearly here. There is a golden sand and powder of stone in the concrete. There is all the walls which were made with very cheap show, calc, which was applied across brush so it could reveal the light. And then there is all the ceiling that is this diamond ceiling that was meant as a very sharp, efficient infrastructure for professional lighting in all exhibiting rooms, but then tuning with a representativeness of the ceilings of the existing building, but in a different way, and also to calm the regularity of all the rooms. So there is guaranteed a 60 millimeter of distance from the borders where ceiling and wall meet. But then, moreover, we have all this sharpening of the walls. They decrease in thickness. I wished a painted space so that you could make the brick solid as a wall disappear and become a drawing, so that the space between one room and the other could closer. The brick comes from the 3 bricks of the existing building from 1958 and 4 laying beds of mortar. Why? To tune, so that you are not dissonant, that you are coming as a decent neighbor and you give respect and you just don't go your own way independently. And the brick then was in a way ruling all the sizes of the openings, even if there were a diversion to the rule. Why this choice? House for Contemporary Art is a public building. It needs representativeness. So I wish it to be paradoxical. So antique as an opus reticulatum was only from Roman time, and at the same time a textile, weightless. And luckily it is also, we are very fortunate. We're really very fortunate. This is a wondrous wall in Ercolano where the wind is consuming more strongly the tufa, the stone, than the calc. But here we are in Ghent, and we are in Cadore, in Venezia. So I did not invent anything. Why do we need always to invent things? I worked the hell out to make possible to produce a rumble brick, to press it, cut it, move it, to let it dry and not fall, to let it rest. So that, yes, but all this imaginary, it's not an invention, it is there, it's important to relate to it. It is a solid facade that seeks a precise ambiguity. The sills have a 63 millimeter of mortar because you have to see it is a multi-layer facade. So if you will not go around with the construction of the sill, you will get like a raccoon crack, because all different materials, no, they move different. So if they shift horizontally, they would crack precisely all around like a raccoon. Then you had to move around 63 millimeter of mortar, of which the last 12 are pigmented. So you can hit it and you don't get a delusion or disillusion, but it is in between. Well, it is a tectonic construction, load-bearing. Is a reinforced facade, and on that, if you have questions, we can later open other drawings. I want to do another story today, not really technical, but I have drawings that I can open, if you want. But it is also a painted facade, because the finishing of the pigmented mortar of the seal is brought to the edge of the mortar of the bricks, so it reveals it is a 0.3 millimeter. That we human perceive. So that is all for me what collaborates to an experience. And all of this was for this sense of wonder and belonging, so that We all know these words in opus reticulatum. We may encounter them again in Hasselt in Belgium, but completely different, as painted. And it is the scene for the plants and for the living. And that brings us to my real core question, which is, how do we find home? I think, at least my job is all about that. It's all about myths. And then displaying many, many tools. Myth is where we can be safe. It stays. We read Ovidio. Aren't all these gods and goddesses like highly capricious children? Yet they tell stories that speak about all of us. They speak about all our limits and possibilities, all our defects. Human beings are terrible and amazingly wonderful, always. And it is also, you have this storytelling that where fables speak about animal behavior. So myth is not fabulating in without precision. Is the opposite. It's a combination of imagination and observation, sharply entwined together. That's why there's not a better way of saying it than Lévi-Strauss. Art lies halfway between scientific knowledge and mythical or magical thought, which means openness and honesty to the core. Often I draw drawings which are both plan and section and even a view while I'm studying. I've been studying Schenkel a lot. We were invited to present a proposal for housing 6,000 square meters, so massive, in the Riviera in Liguria. And was drawing a pacing and asking myself, what makes a villa villa? And how did Schenkel imagine Roman villas? You know, he made engravings reading texts, not seeing drawings. He was reading texts and imagining and then making engravings. This is a visionary project for a royal palace at the Acropolis of Athens. He's referring to Greek. And in all these villas, if you pay attention, I will go back. If you pay attention, it is about building the experience of a continuously changing landscape. So you have long halls which are opening in one direction, but the space is very elongated. Then he closes you and makes you turn. So you are in forgetfulness of what you experienced. He makes you turn again and you discover another view. Then go again in forgetfulness, becomes tiny, and he makes you just live with a kind of screen of leaves around, so you can keep on forgetting and reflecting on what you had. And then he gives you a point when you discover another sequence, this time of salon, which is another garden. So all this construction of landscape calls for time. That's also the way how all these beautiful Chinese paintings are disposed, that they are a composition of the mind, where you have big mountain, then coming very afar, then comes very close, but it is real for us when you look at it, because it's how we can relate to it and we call it, and so does Schenkel. He is building, but he's making it real. he's wonderful. I don't know. He's wonderful. And so we were trying. And we are proposing a Villa di Plinio. It's clearly an homage, because that's very important to me, to always honor people from whom I learn, because I'm just learning from others. And that's it, Villa di Plinio. It is 6,000 square meters, 8 floors building. But you always perceive only 2 or 3. What you see in blue is a world of gardens, blue-green. What you see in kind of rust is a world of galleries and more urban squares. And what you see in ochre, pale sand ochre, is a real villa on the attic floor. But what it is all about? It's about living in the outdoor. It's about a sense of living where you are never feeling in an enclosed house, under a pergola, even if you have roofs. That's very challenging and complex to do when you have a slope like this in Liguria. Liguria is really typical that there is the mountain really pressing towards the sea. So you are left with very, very little. Elizabeth knows, she has just come very gently to visit me. It's very, very squeezed, so you have little earth. So how do you dispose this Villa di Plinio when you're not on a valley? You're not flat. And so there becomes the invention. Really exciting me. And I'm going to show you our work table. We are doing it. So we are handing in the building permit, and maybe some drawings I wish they would be better. For that I apologize, but I thought it was important to share what we're doing now. That's the section. The invention is to trick perception. So where you have the hill, where you would imagine that you have all the mountain, it is to empty it and create a garden. So it's to create a double face facade. So you have a landscape which is overlooking in this direction toward the sea, and then you have another landscape which is overlooking towards mountain. And the building is in the middle, a threshold, as Samuel Beckett was saying, I am the thin foil in between. But that building is in reality unfolding as a U, so there you have this double face which is multiplying. And so that is happening in more than one direction. And moreover, where this is opening, it's always opening towards landscape. So you have a deep courtyard in this place. I feel I'm getting enthusiastic. I really love this. It is opening towards a valley, but you have always a collaboration. Like thinking that you make a building and we're good like that, it is absurd. We were at the villa today with Asplund, and it was living of all the 100 meters around. We need 100 meters and kilometers around to make something reasonable as a building. And so, in this place, we have a garden which is living of a valley of a river, really, very wild. It's the only wild valley reaching the sea in Genova. And on this side, we present as a palazzo on the sea, so it's straight, neat. On the other side, it is labyrinthian meandering, growing towards the hill, so you present. And here we have the invention of the double face of the courtyard. But you will not follow all of this because this plane is really complex, but I like to give you my words, even if it may be puzzling, together with the drawings. I begin like this, measuring, trying to fit the program. Remember, 6,000 square meters, it's very dense. There is also a spa, and there is also a restaurant and cafe, and there are 2 floors of underground parking. With very tight urbanistic boundaries, defined volume, and there needs a reflection. Many times today we have some rules which are kind of hinting bad habits, because it takes such an effort or it's such a challenge to twist the game that it's normal that people don't do it. So question is if we can reflect more on urban rules. In this case, for example, you calculate volume, everything that gives presence to the building. But if you have a flying slab, that's not a volume. So that is inducing cantilevering slabs that I find highly inelegant and bold and totally, I wish they stop to do that. So to fix that program with height from finished floor to upper finished floor is 306. I see here colleagues that for sure have been doing a lot of housing, so you know that that is really tight, no? 3 meters 06. How do you do that? So the challenge here is to do the new ferrocemento by Nervi. So it is squeezing the structure to, I show you better here. We have a 60 millimeter prefab, which is ripped with only 40. Then we have a trick that I learned from Albini to smoothen up and have a kind of combed laying on the beams that are from pillar to pillar. And then you cast on top 80 millimeter, which means that you have a 140 slab for spans of from 3 to 5 meters, which are ribbed for 100, inter-axis for 100. This is quite challenging and exciting. And we are doing that, working with the reinforcement that of course needs retuning. So again, how do you do it? So I went to study in RV and then I've been working with engineers. So we work with a 23 millimeter bar. It is one on top of the other, quite close. You just keep 8 between one and the other bottom. And then you just weave them as it was like we saw these beautiful flowers at the market today, which had very fine lines, so like weaving, or like the beautiful handrail of Scandia, by, or that we have here. This way, so very fine metal of 6 millimeter bars, so it's very, very, very nearby. And in that way, it is literally ferro, it is steel covered with concrete. And that way we pollute less, we are efficient, we give air to the inhabitants, we keep tiny in the context. It's everywhere win-win. But you need to do research, you need to dare. I'm very excited of this. Why do we do this? I go back. Because the wish is to have a living which is a Mediterranean living. Naked feet, we are the sea. Naked feet, just beams and a loose walking around. Which is surprising with the attitude of a villa. This is a structure and you may start beginning to see it. I'm showing you flying drawings because it's a study. It's important to see that there's not a certain way it is searching. So here you see the plan of the prefab slabs with ribs and of the pillars, and of course the cast in situ are taken with the momentum. And this is the most recent version where you see it more complex. It is very dear to me. It is surprising, you will see more after, how such a rigid structure can be so loose in movement. That is interesting very much to me. And all goes back to myth. Remember myth. Question, how do you live landscape in a house? How do you live landscape in topography? No? How do you make a Villa di Plinio dreamt and engraved by Schinkel on topography? These are all the levels of the structure overlapped. And here the plans. I skipped the parking, which are 2. So here we are at the first level, where you have a front of apartments and the back is technical and storage, canteen storage. Then you have access to the parking and the swimming pool and storage, so okay, stuff, technical, but here it begins to open. So the building starts to orientate and grow in the landscape. It is opening with a facade, so here are the offices and opens to the garden, which overlooks the valley. Begins these apartments as well, and you see in section. So what do we have? 2 completely underground floors. First this one. 2 completely underground floors, 2 half underground floors, and then we have 4. But what happens is that you perceive the building only of 3 floors. And I still can't believe it. On top of the swimming pool, you have a garden. Let's go scrolling. This is the public level. So you have the restaurant. If you follow my arrow, it's all unraveling around the facade, making all the tour. It means public, you can enter here and there and everywhere. Center of the palazzo, counterbalance, you have a view all through the swimming pool and you reach the garden. Here you have the swimming pool, which is this area of services, a mosaic and twine tile. Welcome services, distribution in one side going to the palestra or gym, but you still always keep on the other side that you have the apartments and become the loggia. You grow and the apartments, as you see, are very open. It's very tiny, the plan, but I think you can see it. You sleep high windows because it's hot. And so you go in the shadow and then you leave towards the facade, overlooking the sea. All the apartments have loggias and have gardens, the one with are certain floors. We go rising up, rise up, and this is a villa. Don't need to explain, but it goes all around. These plans need a little bit of time, but I want to go back here. As you saw from the plans, the thing I wanted to share with you is that the typology of apartments change very much, even if the theme of living is the same, and the structure is very rigid in a way. But you have to imagine it's going to be a skeleton of incredibly slender pillars and incredibly slender beams and incredibly slender slabs. And within that, it is moving. So all this orchestration of modules that there are still contradictions that we are working on. So I'm not showing you something which is finished, but all these, it's like drawing literally the music of the building, even if the so that the apartments can be different, but all these distances already hold everything. I go back so that you may see it again. This is very challenging. It's precisely the question how you combine discipline and freedom. Why? You have a concrete construction on the sea that could stand and somehow hold memory of all the culture of living with nobility in front of the sea, which belongs to Riviera, but also to remember other places. It is a way to create and persist in multiplying, again, lapses of shadow within a building, so it may tune with the lapses of shadow that belong to the park, but also to the folds of the valley. It is because disposing a way of living among gardens, but not just putting a pot. Disposing all the living through gardens so that your way home is a landscape of gardens that moves around and make you turn around, like in Villa di Plinio by Schinkel. That is why we are making this knosso labyrinth of music, to have delight. And for that we have to invent many things. I would like now to close thanking you with words that are very dear to me by Pina Bausch. We forget where the movements come from. They are born from life. When you create a new work, the point of departure must be contemporary life, not existing forms of dance. Therefore, to be open, to invent the tools we need to be alive in fullness, not economical fullness, in I say human fullness, meaning this mythical life of humanity, this ability of wonder, which is the ability to invent worlds and bring them to life. Because that is the thing. Things matter when you bring them to life, reflecting on life. And that's what I try to do, and that is what made me find family in Elizabeth Hutz. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this beautiful. I am just so intrigued about your spatial sort of experience and how you try to reinvigorate these classical spatial traditions into the contemporary life and give us some ideas about it. And but I'm just thinking, well, you do some kind of interpretation of Palladio or the classical spaces, but you transform it in some way, and your interpretation of the contemporary here is. Well, I'm very intrigued by this, and could you elaborate on that a little more from more, well, maybe a practical point of view? I mean, dance is also culture. When you dance, you actually perform tradition or history, and you speak of architecture as a form of dance. That is how I understand you, and so. How have you been received in the public discourse? What kind of reactions have you received from this approach to the classical tradition?
Well, last is maybe complex because I react with what I can say. How people react to me, let's ask them, not me. No? So. About, I don't think there is, I go from another place. I think we need to discern and name moments of history because we need to make accessible understandings. But I can believe better the historiography of France with Prodel and Les Annales, which is much more problematic and less assertive in flagging. There is also the school by Huizinga, which was this Dutch historian. No? There is a waning of the Middle Age, which makes quite a stand in front of Burkhardt. And I am interested in history and historiography that searches the sources and tries to understand what really happened. And so in this coexistence of several endings and beginnings. This to say about naming. And you say classicism, no, I'm coming, just a little bit of patience. Give me a bit. And about the classicism, for example, you were saying, how do you interpret and so on. This relates to that. So I believe that there is a great misunderstanding that the last 50 years, let's say, 60. Last 60 years are assumed not only in the practice of architecture, but in everything in societies, it seems like all the story of humankind, while we are nothing. Last 60 years are nothing. So I'm interested in confronting myself with what I can grasp of millennia and centuries. You start seeing my shift? So in that sense, there are indeed languages. Why do we have classical language? It's complex, a very complex subject, and I'm even no historian, I'm not a theoretician, I build buildings, so I'm really not entitled for an appropriate talk. I recall wonderful readings by Adrian Forti, Words and Buildings, which is exposing reflections on character, for example. And in that sense, language on one side has an aspect of which is comparable to mythology, myths, so the fabulative process of transferring a story. So also with Wittgenstein, no? You have a language which is the tool which is gathering a common understanding for things, but yet it's not sufficient. Because on the other side, you really do have things that mean one thing to one person, one thing to another person, and even you have the coexistence of paradoxical and contrasting things, which is the precise definition of light by Goethe, no? Rumano paccatum. All these things are real. We are kind of non-equipped for paradoxical realities. So following up, on the other side also language is where it has sedimented a down-to-earth physical knowledge, which means the form to cut the wood, the form to cut stone. Brunelleschi did made a competition of Santa Maria del Fiore only with a text. But before, he was on the Arno River when it was dry, in sands, with the boots, making the stone blocks. So, what language do we have today? Are we able to tell any story to any Zeus that we can recognize? There is no Zeus in this moment. But we do have many folk stories. That's why I am putting so much hope and trust in that, because it's everlasting. Humankind just doesn't let it go, so let's grab it. Not Zeus, it is the folk. And but not. I'm speaking serious about it, kind of dry. I hope this comes out. So prop, it's anthropology. On the other side, language. There's the trick of modern movement, which is, or the Bauhaus. Now, often we are told that the Bauhaus is this monolithic school, when it is not. If you read all the exchange of letters between all directors and teachers and students. It is to cry for weeks of emotion, for the genuinity of engagement, and also the difficulty of confrontation and the differences. Why then there is, it followed the propaganda of one faceted Bauhaus, and so the modern movement? Why do manifestos that they call the pop manifesto have so much grip? So that is where I think today a lot of pressure on the definition and invention of a language for every given new founded office is so unhealthy and pointless and even destructive of a society. I will go back to something different, asking more, let's go and have a walk in the real and see how our space is and what do I really remember and like. How do I speak normally in life? Where do I want to go on holiday? We're honest. Now, where do we go? Where we're good. Don't go where our intellectualism brings us. So, then in Italian there is a difference between language and linguaggio and lingua. Linguaggio is more rational. It's it is close to Wittgenstein's language. It's language. Lingua has also something physical. So you have like Munari was making la lingua delle mani, no? It was the gesture of the hands, or and there is indeed a difference. And I am interested in something that I have great difficulty in naming, because it is not, it is contradictory, and it's not named in one word. When I speak of Palladio, in fact, if you notice, no, I was not speaking about the geometry or the concatenation of clear unity of spaces that has been very well studied by wondrous historians like Howard Burns. I'm interested in the invention of landscape inside a villa. And for the language, I think it's about a posture. So again, it's like I go back to Orazio. So I think we should, in general in the universe, start to believe again that we are entitled for beauty and delight. And that we are totally not in need of mortification. That would a little bit change, because then language, the classical language, which was the consolidated good practice, let's say, the consolidated practice that survived, so what people chose and did not let drop, so survived what was worth to survive, means something. But that yet doesn't relate necessarily to a figure or a material. We can elongate life of the dignity of what survived with our available voice today. That's what I'm saying.
Thank you.